Bidding and budgets in Facebook is fairly straightforward, so we're going to breeze through this step relatively quickly, but there are a couple of things that you want to keep in mind, some things that we've learned in our own campaigns that I know will really help you establish some of those initial bids. Uh, First thing though that I want to show you is this is the area where when you're setting up your ad, this is what it'll look like when you go to do your bids. You can see you select a campaign name and you give it a daily budget. And I really would, in the beginning, select a daily budget that is comfortable for you. Now, one thing that is not shown here is in your initial settings, there's also a campaign budget. So an overall campaign budget. Now, my suggestion to you is that you have that campaign budget be fairly high, quite high in fact, because we found when we had our campaign budgets low, we weren't getting anywhere near hitting our daily budget. So we might have a daily budget of $100 and our campaign budget, might be $2,000. Well, when we weren't getting anywhere near our daily budget. Well, when we raised our campaign budget from 2,000 to 10,000, now all of a sudden we were hitting our daily budget. So they will throttle you based on your campaign budget. So really set your campaign budget at a fairly high level, not so high that if you hit it you would just be in the poorhouse, but you want to manage your campaigns and you want to manage your budgets using the individual daily budgets as they're established in the separate campaigns. So just that's kind of one thing that you need to keep in mind. In terms of scheduling, for the most part, you're going to run your ad continuously starting today. You might at some point switch it over to where you only run in specific dates and times. But for the most part right now, you can just let it run. Now, what I do absolutely recommend you do in the beginning, pay for clicks. You want to do cost per click, CPC, not pay for impression. We'll talk about that in just a second, but you definitely want to start off with paying per click. It's just a safer, more conservative way to do it. You'll get more clicks if you pay per impression, or actually, I'm sorry, you'll get more impressions if you pay per impression. Now, how targeted those impressions are, will remain to be seen. And if you're paying per impression, you really want to make sure that you got an ad that's getting the clicks, and you want to make sure that you have an offer that's converting. So start with CPC, and then switch to CPM. I mean, CPM is definitely worth testing. And if we talked about kind of that magic 2% click-through rate rule, if you're not getting a 2% click-through rate, but you're still getting a really solid ROI, you might want to go in and switch to pay for impression. And it's not that big a deal. You will know what your average click-through rate is, and so you can kind of factor, if my average, if right now I'm paying, as a cost per click, if I'm paying on average 50 cents and I'm getting a 1% click-through rate, you can run the numbers and figure out if you're paying per impression based on a 1% click-through rate, what you should pay per impression to get approximately the same effective cost per click. Now, the great thing about paying per impression, if you're getting a really high click-through rate, so if you're getting a 6, 7, 8% click-through rate, then it may make sense to switch it over to pay per impression, because then you can just take all the clicks you can get, because you're paying for the ad no matter what. And there have been some cases where we have been able to lower our overall ad costs by switching to a CPM model from a cost per click model. So it definitely is worth testing, but don't test CPM until either one, you have a runaway winner and you just want to see if you can get even more traffic and possibly lower your effective cost per click by switching to an impression model. That's one time to do it. Or two, if you're below that, if you just can't seem to get above that 2% click-through rate number and you're worried that they're going to start throttling your traffic, that's another time. But your numbers are good. You're profitable. That's another time to switch to CPM. Now, I know a lot of people will ask, how do I bid? How much should I bid? Should I bid what Facebook suggests? Because Facebook, they will suggest some bids for you, which I think is quite nice of them. They'll go through and they'll say, hey, why don't you bid 52 to 63 cents for this, right? Well, you can take their suggestion if you want. My advice is to do what we do. And that is, we bid half the highest recommended amount for 2 days. So going back to this example, half the highest recommended amount, they recommended 63 cents. So we would bid half that amount for 2 days. Then we bid the highest recommended amount for 2 days, and that kind of gives us a good ROI range. So we found if you go less than half of the highest recommendation, you're not really going to get any traffic. That's kind of the lowest that you're going to be able to bid. So if they recommend 50 cents and you bid 25 cents, you're probably going to get some traffic, and it may even work out really well at that number. If you try to bid 15 cents rather, you're probably not going to get much, if any, traffic. Okay, so half the highest recommended amount for 2 days, that'll give you your kind of lowest number. Then the highest recommended amount for 2 days, and that'll give you the top end number. So you can kind of figure out at that point, where do I need to be? And typically you'll find it somewhere in the middle usually. So for an example, again, in this case, the suggested bid was 52 to 63 cents. So what we would do is we would take 63 cents and cut it in half, which is approximately 32 cents rounding up. And we would bid 32 cents for 2 days, then 63 cents for 2 days, and just see what happens. What happens to your traffic? What happens to your click-through rates? Do you get higher conversions? If you make money at 30, maybe that you don't make money at the low number, but you do make money at the high. Maybe the opposite. It may be that you make some money at the low and but you make a lot more at the high number. I mean, it just depends. But this is going to give you your range, and once you have your range, you're going to know the next step that you need to take. It'll be obvious. Okay, so that's basic bidding strategies. I said it was quick and easy. It's because it is. There's not a whole heck of a lot to it. Now, though, the next thing we're going to talk about, there is quite a bit too. We're going to talk about landing pages, and this kind of is the make or break factor in Facebook. So definitely make sure you got some pen and paper handy. Make sure you're taking notes, because the next step is landing pages.